bring you some breaking news from the UK. The British cabinet has now agreed to a new Brexit plan backed by Prime Minister May. Now, under this proposal, the UK will suggest creating a single market with the EU for goods, which will have to conform to existing EU rules. But Britain and the EU could diverge on services, and the free movement of people between Britain and the EU would end. Conservative MP Peter Bone joins me now from London. I am just going to get your reaction right off the bat to that, because does this sit well with you, just in terms of the kind of positions that were, you know, pretty much very contentious even around that cabinet table?
Well, we've only had this statement for half an hour, and of course one of the important things is, will we be able to do a trade deal with the US? The future growth of the world economy is outside the European Union, and the biggest single country we trade with is United States. So we have to make sure that there is nothing there that would hinder such a trade deal. I'm afraid it's too early to know, because we'd have to look into the small print. But I want to make sure that we are globally looking and not inward looking towards the EU.
You do seem skeptical, maybe even a little bit surprised. I mean, obviously, this was something that was hashed out. They couldn't have done it just in the few hours at Chequers. What do you think, given Boris Johnson's position and then perhaps what's happened on the other side of the cabinet table, what kind of an accommodation do you think they've come to that the EU will actually agree to?
Well, that's the point. I don't think the EU will agree to it whatsoever. They have a very firm position on free movement, and I don't think they will agree to this. I think what will happen is that we will probably come out of the European Union on global trade rules, which is exactly the way we trade with the United States of America. So whilst this was an interesting and important meeting at Chequers, I don't really think it moves things forward. The interesting thing was perhaps in the very last paragraph, where it said we are going to step up preparations for a global trade arrangements. So the government recognises that there's a significant chance that we will not do a deal with the EU, which I suppose in one way is a step forward.
A step forward, although I would say we're right back to step one, because a crash out still seems likely. Mr. Pone, I'm going to go back.
No, I'm not letting you get away with a crash out. You know full well that's not the case. We would actually be trading with the European Union the way we trade with yourselves, China, and everyone else in the world. And it's based on world trade rules. And, of course, the whole purpose of world trade rules is to increase trade and reduce tariffs. So I don't think we have anything to fear by doing that. What we probably have to worry about is being tied into the European Union with their rules, which are restrictive. And very worryingly, if we can't do international trade deals. We're welcoming President Trump here next week, and we're looking forward to seeing him. And I expect some of the discussions will be how we improve the trade between our two great nations.
Well, check with the allies about how that's gone with them so far with President Trump. But I do want to move on to one thing that piqued our interest today. You had said that if there was any kind of dissenting voices around that cabinet table, the government warned them your minister's car won't be ready and waiting for you outside of Chequers. You would pick them up a mile away. They would have to walk a mile. You would pick them up there, though, and drive them home. I mean, it's funny, and I appreciate that you made the offer, and yet it underscores really the great break in that cabinet still. The fact that they themselves are a reflection of Brexit and how contentious it still is in the country.
Well, it's certainly a contentious issue, but of course the people decided. The people voted to come out of the European Union, and I have my car keys here ready to go to Chequers if any of the cabinet ministers do decide to resign. It looks unlikely, as you say, but, you know, I'm only about an hour away, and I'll be there if they need picking up.
The car's filled with petrol, is it? Sounds good.
It's filled with diesel.
Oh, diesel, right, good one. I do want to ask you, though, again, the rousing cabinet. I mean, how long do you think Theresa May and Boris Johnson can continue to exist in this cabinet together?
Well, I'd like to see more Brexiteers in the government. The position of the government is that all ministers are now supposed to be Brexiteers. The Prime Minister so far has set a number of red lines, which I fully support: not paying billions of pounds each and every year to the European Union, ending the free movement of people, making our own laws in our own country, judged by our own judges, having our own independent trade policy and regaining our territorial waters. Now, if we maintain that all the way through and achieve that, then I think the British people will be happy. If we don't, and we betray them, then we'll have let the British people down, and we will be hammered at the ballot box if we do that.
So before I let you go, the EU has just welcomed this in some measure. Mr. Barnier has on Twitter. I get the sense, and perhaps you correct me if you think I'm wrong, that the EU pretty much knew what was going to be presented to the UK cabinet before they sat down, and it sounds like they're ready to deal.
Well, I understand the German Chancellor was shown it some days ago before British cabinet ministers, which is incredible. But I would be willing to have a 10p bet with you that the European Union will reject this proposal, and at the end of the day, I think we will come out on world trade rules, and the sooner we come to that conclusion, I think the better.
You are a more courageous man than I. I'm not taking that bet because I have no idea where this is going to go. Mr. Bond, I can't thank you enough. We've had this breaking news. It's been very good to get your insights. Appreciate it.